Good evening, everyone. I'm told that this is a highly awaited webinar. We are very happy to present the third webinar from SCAI, which is the Shopping Center Association of India. We have Rajneesh Mahajan here from Inorbit. We have Rashmi Sen here from Phoenix and Pankaj from the Virtuous Retail, and I represent DLF. And here is Raghu, our moderator. Welcome, Raghu.
Thank you. Sorry, I had some issues with the internet. I hope it's all fine now. Thanks, Pushpa. Okay, first of all, a brief word about the Shopping Center Association of India and what we're doing before we actually jump into what I think will be a really lively and interesting discussion. The Shopping Center Association of India was formed in 2008, and it's been a long journey, 12 years. And Amitabh was the person who started it. I remember getting on board sometime in 2009 when we had a meeting in Neil Raja's office. And that's when it really took shape. The idea is to collaborate, bring in malls, shopping centers under one umbrella, a common platform for all mall developers, to give a unified voice to the industry. Our core focus all along has been on education, on sharing of best practices, and more recently things we've done like standard operating procedures, bringing the whole industry together. We've been particularly active over the last 2 weeks in advocacy, with this recent crisis that we've had, bringing people together. And it's fantastic to see so many shopping center people, retailers, all come together on one platform to share views, see what we can do together and have a common voice. So that's been great. And without further ado, since Pushpa's already introduced the panelists, let me jump in straight away. Now, we're all very, very hopeful that the malls and the centers will start operating very, very soon, in a few weeks, if not earlier. And so the first issue that I really want to address with our great panel is, once shopping centers open, how will customers react? How will the retailers who are going to open their stores react? Because they have to facilitate interaction with customers. So let me kick off by asking Pushpa to lead in with this discussion on how she sees things unfolding over the next few weeks. Over to you, Pushpa.
Thank you, Raghu. As I said, it's an interesting topic, and it's something that we at the shopping centers, all of us are looking forward to. So I'm sure we all have done our bit of consumer research. And let me share some of the common talk that I've heard from retailers, as well as based on our own consumer research. Consumers today are, after almost 60 days of lockdown in few places, there are two categories. One, category A, is someone who is bold and young and really raining to go back to daily life the way they knew it. And the other is a little bit more cautious. You can call them slightly more on the paranoid side space or cautious space. We will need to tackle both these consumers with equal ease and aplomb. I think that's really one of the things that we are looking at from the shopping center side. What I look at is that consumers are coming back to the malls. Initially, when they come in, for the first 30 days, I believe there will be a lot of pent-up consumption that will happen. People have been there for 60 days indoors, and there is a lot of pent-up need that needs to be fulfilled. So initially, we will be in the space of fulfillment of those pent-up needs. And we are all, as a developer fraternity, we exchange notes, we've created SOPs. We are there to welcome the consumers and give him or her the ease and convenience of shopping in a very, very safe manner. We've all created a lot of norms, and I do believe that that will go a long way in giving that consumer confidence that is so necessary. Let's talk about the retailers. Now, retailers are also saying that they're very eager to open doors. They are a little skeptical and worried, some of them. Some of them feel that their brand saliency is so high that it will take lead. Now, let me give you certain examples of Dubai opening. You talk to Dubai mall operators, they say that there's some surprise that they had their way. They actually had the children's wear branded very, very well, of course, because it's the pent-up need. Few brands like with discretionary expenses did not do as well initially, in spite of the Ramadan season kicking in there. So that was a bit of a surprise for them. But on the other hand, it got compensated by the pent-up requirement. So in India also, we will see a similar trend. And our belief is also that there will be a rising nationalism and made in India brands will be a preferred choice in the first 2 to 3 months, because consumers will be looking at is this, COVID free, and where is the source coming from? The source will also be a decider of purchase for the first 3-4 months, seems to be the way. Now, when I look at October, and I'm really looking at, revival from October in the real sense. And when I talk to my partners and a few others in China, when I talk to people in Hong Kong over the weekend, the interesting thing is sales in some of the categories are as high up as 70% or 60% of previous levels, which means that we can see such levels possibly from September, October, but till then we will need to really look at the space much more as a space which we will improve consumer confidence. And I think the consumers will be right back in. There is no doubt. There is a lot of talk today about, will the consumers be permanently away from malls? We do not believe so. Our consumer research tells us very clearly that's not the case. Yes, they'll be cautious, and rightly so. We also, as individual consumers, will be more cautious, but that's just a temporary phase of 3-4 months, and hopefully the vaccine's around the corner. So that's how I would like to look at it. And also the other thing that I'd like to emphasize is that luxury can possibly see the revenge spending happening here. Luxury sales could see the V curve well before the non-luxury space, because there are fewer people. Remember, international travel is going to be very few and far between, even after government opens. So there will be pent-up luxury spends waiting to happen. And the Shadi season is starting early this time. Diwali is a little early. So we believe from October on, we should see the consumer back in full force. Until then, they will behave in that bit of caution. That's really how I look at it.
Okay, that's interesting. I'm going to throw it open to the rest of the panel now. Rajneesh, any further comments? Do you want to add to what Pushpa just said?
I think when we are looking at opening immediately after the lockdown, I think the consumer experiences of this 60 days will have a lot of buying impact. Things that are required for exercises, for your culinary skills, the baking equipment, a lot of crockery, cutlery, house furniture, your athleisure. These are categories that consumer has exposed themselves or experienced themselves in last 60 days, and there would be a lot of immediate demand for these products. Work from home electronic will be a lot in demand, is what my understanding is. I think Pushpa is right. There will be a cautious beginning, and I believe 6 to 8 weeks time we should reach a reasonably high level to give us confidence and start planning growth and start planning marketing campaigns around it.
Okay, interesting. Pankaj, what would you say?
So very similar views, Raghu, what Rajneesh and Pushpa have shared, and as we have been continuously engaged with each other with dialogues with both our co-partners and developers and vendors as well as retailers, I think all of them have one very clear thing, that there is definitely optimism. So the positiveness is definitely there, is that it is a temporary hold on consumerism which is happening because one, there is a lockdown. Secondly, they think that the revival will not be immediate or a drastic, that it will come back as 100% normal. It will be there, it's a question of a gradual uptake in some categories. In some categories, it might just see a surge, as Rajneesh was mentioning, that in some categories, people might want to upgrade their electronics, work from home equipment, their wardrobes. I was talking to one of the large retailers, and he's saying, listen, I'm trying to change my wardrobe for my customers to make a lot more comfortable and work from home clothes, so that because most people would typically stock up on formals because they plan to go to office. And here now they realize that they have less stock of essentials, bodywear essentials, as well as casual wear as well, which they probably need, or their mindset they will need even if they come back to office as well. So I think there'll be some shift in certain categories. But I think it's a question of how we come back in respective markets. Some matured markets could come back very fast. And I can share a very interesting example. Is we have equal distribution of our centers in our portfolio in tier 2 markets as well as tier 1 cities, the large metro cities. Till the Janta curfew did not get announced, when I speak to all my colleagues in the industry like Pushpa, Rajneesh, Rashmi, and the others, the impact, and we saw in our shopping centers, the impact on sales was more before the lockdown, was more in tier 1 markets versus tier 2 markets. I think tier 2 markets are much more resilient per se. And we think we've seen that in our center in Surat, in Chandigarh and Amritsar, they were far more resilient, and the customers really didn't care much really till the lockdown didn't get announced. We think they will come back faster. The reason is, one, is the culture, is that they don't have a concept of work from home, because most of the organizations or the businesses people are engaged in would require them to get out of their houses because they're either in trading or some kind of manufacturing or retailing. So, once they get in the habit of going out and they get that comfort level, if a shopping center we all are positively going to provide, is giving them, they're coming to a well-sanitized environment where we're taking absolutely all kind of precautions for them. I think the customer will come back faster than we can anticipate. But I said it will behave slightly different in certain markets, but over a period of a couple of weeks, maybe a month or two, it will take for things to settle down and people will come. And I think by Diwali or really onset of Dussehra, actually, where is really the festive season, provided the vaccine is already in place, I think we should be absolutely back to normal, and people are just forgotten about it and said, oh, that we knew what the lockdown was and now things are back to normal.
But that's good. And let's hope it turns that way. Rashmi, I have a related question, but slightly different. You were actually on the verge of opening your new center in Lucknow just before the lockdown. And obviously, because of that, you had to postpone. How do you see customers in a place like Lucknow reacting?
Rashmi, sorry, you're on mute.
Yeah. I think you're on mute, Rashmi.
That's an interesting question, Raghu, that you asked. It was 13th of March. I think that's the date when they announced the shutdown of malls in Karnataka. Mm-hmm. And we were all sitting in the Lucknow office. The next morning, we were going to open the mall, and everyone was really excited. In fact, the mall is about 85% of the stores are merchandised, and the entire mall was ready to open the next day. And we took a decision to then defer the mall opening. In fact, the entire team, it was a very sentimental moment for them, because all of us here realized when we are opening a mall, what goes in, the 2 months prior to opening of the mall. So it was a very sentimental moment for the team when we took a decision. We will defer the opening of the mall and we will not open the mall now. Mm-hmm. So I think coming back to the customers, the question that you asked, Raghu, it's an interesting question. When we build our assets, we are building these assets for a period of 40, 50 years. These are really solid assets that we are building. Palacio Lucknow in particular that you're talking about, I think we've gone totally out in terms of the architecture and design. The whole mall is designed like a European palace, very opulent, very luxurious in terms of its interiors, architecture. We have about 75 chandeliers all across the mall. We have a 171 feet long musical fountain, and several other such features. You look at the domes, you look at the grand entrances, and I think the tenant mix that we have, more than everything else, I think what is the most important for the customer is the customer comes to the mall. One is, of course, the experience, and these malls are community centers today, and they're a second home for the customers. But the customer is ultimately coming there to buy something, to eat at a restaurant, to watch a movie, to get their kids to play at a FEC center. So I think above everything else, what we have in Lucknow is a very formidable tenant mix. And I think with such a solid combination of design, architecture, and tenant mix, uh, I fully understand that everybody, I think worldwide, everybody is going through a challenging time. It's not only about India or Lucknow, but it's going to be short-lived. But like Pushpa rightly said, I mean, worldwide, everybody is working on a vaccine, working on a cure. And I think it's a matter of time. It could be 6 months, it could be 12 months. Worst case scenario, it could be 24 months. But we will be out of this situation soon. So in the short run, it's difficult to say how the customers will react in the short run. But on our part, just like everyone else on the forum, I think for all of us, the safety and well-being of our customers and retailers is paramount. And we've all put very strict protocols and SOPs in place, whereby we will ensure the safety of our customers in the COVID period, whether it's the sanitization, temperature checks at the entrance, the management of restrooms in a certain way, making it mandatory for everyone to wear the mask. RAI has made a very detailed SOP for all their retail brand partners. And, we will ensure that all the retailers follow those SOPs to keep the customers safe. So initially there may be, there may be a bit of a reluctance to come to the Lucknow Mall. Though, to be honest with you, Raghu, our worry was, and why we decided that day to not open the mall, because the mall is so grand. My last visit in Lucknow, the one of the local brand owners of Ada, is a very popular brand in Lucknow. And he mentioned that the day the mall opens doors, it'll become the nerve center of the city. So I think our larger worry was that the entire city will come here, and at a time when we want to actually ensure as a community, as a citizen, we want to ensure social distancing, it might not be the right thing to open the mall in such a scenario. So I think I would not be worried that we will not see customers coming to the mall, or we would not see shopping happening. I think our concern in the initial period would be to restrict the footfall. Actually, when you talk about the customer behavior, I expect that we will see customers in very large, footfalls coming to the mall, but we would want to restrict the footfall in the initial period. And I think, like Pushpa rightly mentioned and Pankaj mentioned, I think shopping behavior in the short run is going to be very subjective. It may be more necessity-led and not, leisure-led initially. But it's a matter of time before things will come back to normal.
Good. One thing I'm happy to note that I think generally the panel, and I certainly, and all of us, I think, are very positive and optimistic. And I think that's the one feeling I'm getting, which is great. Just leading on from there, we're gearing up, the malls are going to open, and we'll find out how customers will behave. Like everybody says, cautiously, and then gradually more and more come back on track. But what kind of marketing initiatives can we look at? What are the specific things that we should look at? How do we partner with retailers? I know on behalf of SCAI, we set up a small committee consisting of Dilip Sehgal of Nexus, Vishak of Aditya Birla Fashion, and myself, along with our teams, marketing teams. We put together a marketing template as a general guideline. But I'd be very keen on knowing from each one of you how your organizations and your centers are looking at, how do you want, what kind of marketing initiatives do you have in mind? What is it that specifically retailers should partner with, and in what form and shape, and eventually, of course, what impact it will have on customers? So Pankaj, if I can sort of start with you on this one, please.
I think the first bit of marketing, and what we are doing is, the first bit of communication and marketing, what we are doing is going out with a communication message to give the comfort level and confidence level to the customer to come to a shopping center. And really, we're not talking about only come to VR or come to do this and the others. It's, I think, generic. A lot of us have debated about it, is to give them a comfort and a confidence level to come to a shopping center. That's the clear first baseline messaging which we are giving them. And obviously highlighting in terms of telling them what steps you've taken to ensure their safety of them and their loved ones if they're accompanied by in the shopping center. So what we're doing is a communication strategy. Going forward, obviously, we are not going to do the traditional marketing strategies, which we typically end up doing as shopping centers, is do large events, big where we try and get congregate a lot of people together, whether it's markets, whether it's farmers markets, or whether it's kind of a children's events or the others. I think a lot will be a very specific, target-oriented, one-to-one, individual, customized reach out program to our customers, to whether and we've even spoken to retailers and saying, can we share our databases? Or we are happy to share our databases, because some of us, our centers have been operational for more than 5 years. Some of our centers have been operational for more than 5 years. And we've collected a wealth of database of our tenants. And we even have, of our customers. And we even have their breakup in terms of their shopping preferences of what they shopped in the past, what they typically like and what they don't like. So I think we're reaching out to partners and saying, please, happy to utilize this database to reach out to customers, to give them individual opportunities to come into your store. Whether it is maybe a customized offer, somebody who's been a preference of buying is cosmetics. So going back to cosmetic retailers and saying, why don't you create an opportunity for them to reach out to you, or for us to get them into the shopping center per se as well. So I think that's really a more focused approach right now than about doing the traditional modern way of getting people into a shopping center is by doing large scale events and reasons to get them in.
Okay, Rashmi, is that something you would also subscribe to with your portfolio?
Pankaj is absolutely right. I think the most important thing is inculcating confidence in the customers, that the malls are a safe place for them to return, because these are very uncertain times. I think nobody has seen these times. And, considering the media hype that has been created, everyone is also scared and thinks, several times, probably there's a family discussion that will happen before a member decides to go to a shopping center, which has never been the case. Because the shopping centers are really the community centers. They are the second home for customers. In fact, it's interesting in India because you don't have any, quality public spaces. The only place where the Indian customer goes is the shopping center. Internationally, the trend is so different as compared to India, where the culture is that the customer goes to that shopping center as a quality public space. So I think it's important for us to inculcate confidence in the customer. At Phoenix, in fact, we used to spend a lot in terms of our marketing budgets. We do a lot of things throughout the year. We will not be doing all those things. We do large events, concerts, art related, large decor. So we really do a lot of marketing and other initiatives to bring a lot of footfalls to our centers. So for the next 3 months, we will not be doing any of those things, because our purpose is also to keep the crowds restricted and to not do anything that will, result in bringing large crowds to any one place in the mall. That is point number one. Point number two, apart from doing regular communication that will inculcate confidence in the customer, I think there will also have to be a regular brand related communication with the customer, because, some of the brands may have different offerings or different communication that they want to do with the customer. Some of them may have different timings of opening or shutting down. F&B may, some of the brands that didn't have a takeaway, they may introduce a takeaway now. So I think there will also have to be a lot of communication, which on behalf of our brand partners, we will need to communicate to our customers. That will be very, very important. And I think it'll be very important to just stay connected with the customer, because, with the restriction of number of footfall per store, dependent on the size of the store, or number of customers allowed per mall, dependent upon the size of the mall. I think it will help through, a loyalty program or through any other program to stay connected with the customer, so that the customer can get real-time information from the mall, and you can make it convenient for the customer accordingly to come to the mall and shop at the mall. I think in the short run, these are really the important things to focus on.
Okay. Pushpa, can you sort of throw some light on how do you see retailers reacting to something like this? What kind of programs would appeal to retailers?
So I believe that, there are 2-3 things that we need to look at when it comes to marketing now. We need to look at collaborative marketing. We need to look at responsible marketing. And we need to look at marketing which is oriented towards creating that space for the next 3 to 4 months into the best community place that they can come to in a safe way. If we achieve these 3 things in a responsible way, then we are there to enjoy what will happen in October. The reason I'm saying that is that retailers today, what is their main concern? Their concern is, I have so much of inventory. My spring summer is still lying completely unsold, unseen by the consumer. What do I do with that inventory? So we need to help them, collaborate with them to ensure that that spring summer inventory and the full inventory that they had planned for is eased off. It is something without having a huge, may I say, a huge crowd in each store. So I think what will happen is marketing will become much more one-to-one in nature. It would be marketing where the database have to be exchanged, like Pankaj rightly said. But beyond that, we in DLF have tried to do this through the lockdown. We actually engaged with a lot of masterclasses with the popular masterclass classes that we had conducted. We had a lot of spool lying with us, and we connected. And the consumers, actually, you will be amazed, they interacted with all our digital platforms. So I believe that that will be the way forward from a marketing standpoint. A lot more digital platform marketing, a lot more one-to-one marketing, and hyper local marketing. That will be the need of the hour for the next 3 months or 4 months. Once the consumer confidence is in place, and once consumers feel that they can come to this place, be it Mall of India, which is large, phenomenally large, and once the Phoenix Mills, the new property that they have, they know that crowds can be controlled by the mall, and the crowds can be at any given point, not just controlled, but convenience be provided at any given point that they come over. So and then I believe then the consumer confidence will increase. When it comes to specific marketing, actually there would be a very different take to it. I believe that we will encourage brands to, some of our luxury brands to actually look in for appointments, because that gives the confidence to the consumer to come in at an appointment oriented time, and there is more conversion. As we go forward, the next 6 months is going to see lesser number of people, but our belief is higher conversion, because planned shopping is what will be the name of the game. So that's the way. So we will collaborate with retailers to ensure that there is planned shopping.
Okay, that's good. I'm going to move to a different topic now. And I think, to my mind, this is one of the most important topics that I think we are touching upon today, which is really about retail is about consumption, right? And this is all about India's consumption story. Growth in retail will happen when consumption happens. For the benefit of all the viewers, about 60% of India's GDP is determined by consumption. Admittedly, that is dipped now because of the lockdown and in the previous quarter. But all of us believe in that consumption story. And if retail has to progress, consumption will see an upward trend. So I'm going to ask Rashmi to sort of take the lead on this one, because you're a very strong believer in the consumption story, and you're betting big on that with your portfolio of malls. So Rashmi, do you want to sort of lead in?
Yes, absolutely. That's a very interesting question you put forth. I think we all know that India is the most attractive retail markets in the world today. And with the second largest population that it has, and a growing middle class and young population, I think the India consumption story is very, very strong. I don't think that 2 months of lockdown and shutdown of malls can put a dent in the strong consumption story that the country has. In fact, to share with you, at Phoenix, out of the 8 shopping centers that we run, for the last 4 to 5 years, we would have seen a compounded growth rate of 12 to 15% across all our centers. In fact, last financial year, our centers put together would have done a consumption of 7,000 crores. So, these are very strong consumption numbers that I'm sharing. And we do see from time to time when the demonetization happened and, some of the other incidents, we do see from time to time that there is a dent that we see in the sales consumption. But eventually what we see that the numbers pick up during the year. If there are some external factors which are leading to a decline in the sales consumption, there's something else that results in the numbers being picked up again. The other point, Raghu, is what I mentioned earlier, when we were talking about the consumers' shopping habit is the cultural habits in India, because in India there are no public places, no sort of sanitized, centrally air-conditioned, A-grade public places where the customers can go to. So considering that our shopping centers are those, convenient public places for the customers where they go out with their family, they go out with their friends. It's a place for them to have all their celebrations. They watch their movies, whatever shopping they need to do, whatever entertainment. So I feel that yes, will there be, when you talk about the India consumption story, I think the India consumption story is really long term. In the short run, for a few months, will we see a decline in sales? I would say yes. In the short run, we may see that, because more than anything else, I would not even get on to the point of salaries or the other problems that some of the organizations or the end user may be facing. But I would say the sentiment, because the sentiment is not very positive. People don't want to really shop that much. But how long will that last? That may last a few weeks. It may last a month. But before we know, the consumers will be back in the shopping centers, because that is something that they love to do, and a shopping mall is a second home to the customers. So I'm confident, and like Pushpa rightly said, and even Pankaj mentioned this, that by September, October, by the wedding season, by the Diwali season, we expect the business to come back to what it was last year.
Okay, Rajneesh, what is your view on this, on the whole consumption story?
I think if you look at the Indian economy, agriculture and IT/ITES is a very large component of Indian GDP. And if these two sectors continue to remain strong, I think the rebound will be very, very fast. There is pain in many sectors, but if you look at those sectors overall are not so large. And hence, I believe by Diwali and the wedding season, which is around Diwali, we should see a very strong growth. It may not be reaching the last year level. We all hope that it crosses last year level, but we should be very close to that. Is that what I feel? And I think there are fundamentals of the economy which may suggest that it may happen.
Okay. And Pushpa, it will be interesting to get your views, because most of your centers are in and around the NCR area. And, traditionally that has been a very large consumption area. Well, give us your perspective.
So I'll give you a couple of examples to elucidate my point. A couple of years back, when demonetization happened, everyone, again, there were a lot of naysayers. They said that, luxury is not going to do well now. We are not going to have, premium brands, discretionary purchases will stop happening, etc., etc. It just took 1.5 months, and I really mean that, 45 days before really the sales picked up, and it picked up with more headwinds, and actually it overtook the previous levels. What's happening is, in India, there is a lot of latent demand that exists in consumers. We are not giving enough credence to the fact that the aspiring millennials, the aspiring Indians, the young Indians, they want to lead a better life. Of course, they're quarantined for 60 days. Of course, they would like to, be cautious, but that doesn't stop them from seeking a better life. That is a fundamental story of India today. And when you look and understand that fundamental story, Delhi NCR being the capital is leading that story. If you look at the consumption in Delhi NCR, is very, very strong and high. We have seen that with demonetization, with the GST, implementation, we saw that there was a bit of a lull. And after that, it actually took off stronger than before because of these strong fundamentals. The other aspect that I'd like to talk about is that, when it comes to the consumption in India, earlier we used to look for international fashion, international trends. Today, our fashion within the country, the trends within the country are so strong that there is also one trend, which is the fusion trend. We are tracking the international trend, the trend within the country in terms of wanting to look good, lead a better life, drive a better car is here to stay. Now, if you look at, is it going to be as good as earlier and how quickly can it be? I would still say give it a few months. This is a big dent. Of course, the COVID scare is not a small one. There is fear psychosis in people. But I do believe that if we tackle the opening with far more responsibility, the cases do not spike too much in July or August, and we are able to handle the opening with far more responsibility, I believe the aspirational audience will come back in full force. And come October, the consumption story will be back on track, if not in full vigor, but at least I would give it another 70% in full vigor.
So I have two sort of related questions for you, Pushpa. One, because you also handle two very prominent, very successful luxury malls, right? Emporio and China. You have that. And one question I have for you is, how do you see the luxury market and consumers behaving once that opens? The second is, a lot of the consumption across the country, and particularly in NCR, is related to the wedding season. Now, given the fact that there may still be restrictions on the number of people and the big Indian weddings may have to be scaled down, do you see any impact?
Well, I'll answer the first question. When it comes to our luxury properties, our belief, and I'm going back to our experience in 2008, when the Lehman Brothers, that crash happened. That's when, if you remember, we opened Emporio. Believe me, within 6 months, the strong nature in which luxury spending occurred in this country was seen to be believed. The reason that happens is that this time around, international travel is going to be restricted. People are going to, avoid traveling internationally, and hence the luxury spenders, however, that the top 3% of Indian economy is such that they have money to spend. They just need outlets and avenues. And the luxury spending gives them that outlet and avenue. We believe that it'll come back very, very strongly, possibly slightly earlier to the premium segment also, because the headwinds and that will definitely be, the Indian wedding. This time, all the weddings was supposed to be in the summers. They've all got postponed. We all know that the weddings have all been postponed to October onwards to November. That itself will propel the sales of luxury and designer wear. Having said that, it's not going to be as easy. We will have to sort of look at each and every brand, to talk and work with them individually to understand their woes, their problems, and understanding their problems will help us create a solution which is really customized in nature to tackle the problems that they've been having in the past 3, 4, 5 months, because they've all been betting very, very heavily on the summer wedding season. Okay, good. I'm going to switch tracks now. And let's assume beyond these initial hiccups and bumps, October onwards, as all of you have been saying in the panel, we'll be back in business as we know it. So if I look at 2021 and beyond, do we as shopping centers, do we need to reinvent ourselves? Do we need to look at the kind of shopping centers that customers will flock to, that retailers will be happy with? Is it going to be much different, very different, not at all different? So Rajneesh, if I can start with you, what are your views on whether we need to sort of reinvent ourselves as shopping centers?
Raghu, as I see, shopping centers have been reinventing continuously. Over last 15 years, if you see on two aspects, one is the trade mix. So continuously, you will see certain categories have been allocated more space and certain categories have shrunken in their space allocation. Food and beverage, entertainment, multiplexes, they have increased significantly in last 15 years. So the trade mix has been on a continuous change. Cosmetics, well-being, sports, health, they are the another categories which have increased a lot in terms of their space presence in the mall. So that will continue as and when we observe the consumer behavior, and we will keep making those changes continually. This is incremental changes. If you look at on the physical side, in last 15 years, which would literally mean ignore the first 5-6 years of shopping center evolvement in India, And last 15 years, we have seen the size of the malls have gone from 100,000 square feet to 1 million square feet on an average now. And typically all the new developments we see are of large scale. They are 500,000 to 1 million square feet, and some of them are even bigger than that. So that is another change that has happened. I don't know how much more it will increase in size here onward, but I do see some large centers getting announced in near future, or they will be under construction. One thing which has not changed much, most of these malls are similar in terms of offering. They do not differentiate from each other drastically. And I see a lot of room in the industry to have products which will be differentiated. Because over the 15 years period, what we have seen, the markets have got localized, and each prominent mall is catering to a certain micro market, and very rarely has an direct competition in that micro market. Moving forward, I see lesser opportunities to have new micro markets developing, because urbanization pace will define new micro markets. So there will be more developments within the same micro market, and there will be a necessity to differentiate the product, and the offerings will change. So we will see neighborhood malls coming in, we will see specialized malls coming in, and they will have a very different offering. They will not be same. Today it is generally said that if you change the mall name, 60-70% tenant mix is going to be same. I think in moving forward, in coming 5 to 10 years time, we will see a very, very differentiated product. And that is where I think the industry will reinvent itself to find new opportunities, to find new margins, to place products in that.
Okay. So, Pankaj, if I can come to you. You've got centers in Punjab, you've got in Surat, Bangalore, Chennai. I know you're on the drawing board. You have Mumbai, Delhi. Now tell me, what is your perspective? I mean, how do you see the new shopping centers that you're going to develop? Do you see them much different from the kind of centers that Virtuous Retail has? Or, what differentiating factors can we see in the new developments?
So Raghu, I know you've been part of the Virtuous Retail journey when it started off, and you were instrumental in building up the Bangalore center. It was one of the first centers. If you come and see to it, it's been the true mixed-use development. We have a co-working, we have a hotel, we have separately provisioned F&B which sits alongside the retail, and then we have a retail center. And from 2017, this has been operational, we find that this model works very, very well. But it's not a standard format which could plug and play in each market. In our Chennai center, we've put service residences, we've put theater for performing arts. We've put a large events deck on our rooftop, which can host standing events of almost about 2,500 people, but with a proper seating, like an aerodrome kind of a concept, where you can actually do a seating for about 1,000 people to watch a concert, and on the rooftop of the center. I think as we go by, shopping centers, traditionally when shopping centers were built, which had a very similar format, put a lot of fashion, put fashion and accessories, put a hypermarket, put cinemas, put some entertainment, put F&B, about 8-10%, and that was the right recipe. I think this recipe is changing now. The dependency on fashion is going to go down. Definitely the dependency on fashion as a category driver, which was at one time 65 to 70% of a shopping center, fashion, and I mean related, or is definitely going to go down. The consumption on entertainment or activity-driven retail will go up. Plus, there will be new segments which will emerge. So in some markets where there is demand for co-working, it could be co-working. In some markets where there is demand for activity spaces, it could be activity spaces. In some markets where there is a demand for co-living, you could put co-living alongside, because I think all of these will integrate very well with shopping destinations today. Because see, as everybody's talking about, and all of us have been using this word repeatedly, is community spaces. What are community spaces? It's just a place where you get conglomeration of people. Typically, if you go to Chandigarh, there's a concept called SCO, shop come office, or a shop come house, where in GK1 market and GK2 market were originally designed in the 70s for the shopkeeper to have a shop below and his residence on top of it. In Chandigarh, it was designed that the shopkeepers will have the shops below and there will be complementary offices on top of it. I think we're just going back to the same kind of creating community spaces. Part of these spaces will also become very modular in nature, and these will change as we go by. So these could become, like you go to Siam Paragon, you see exhibition space on the top floor. In some markets, you could even have dispensaries and educational institutions being clubbed together as well. And we've kind of looking at in some of our shopping centers how we can plug it. Give you an interesting anecdote is in one of our shopping centers, we've got Yale, which is a lock manufacturing, the world's best lock manufacturing and safe manufacturing company in the world, put up their first experience center. They do not really, people don't come and buy locks in a shopping center, right? So we asked them, why you want to do that? And they said, listen, we want people where they can come and experience our product. We want the top end interior designers and architects where they would be comfortable coming in, getting their clients and showcasing them to buy, to pick up, choose. Nobody's going to buy and sell locks there, but it's just an exhibition. It's just an experience center for their product, for their brand. So I think a lot more of the shopping centers will be a combination of spaces depending on each market, but they will evolve going from a traditional model of fashion and related. And F&B obviously continues to play a big part alongside.
Okay. What you said and what Rajneesh said earlier, shopping centers will morph and will evolve with new offerings, co-working, etc., etc. But on the other hand, we also have developers like Phoenix who have a huge expansion plan. Rashmi, what you're building, 7, 8 centers? I don't know, the number keeps going up every day. And these are really, really large centers. So,
yeah, we have 8 operational centers, and we are building 5 new centers over an area of 6 million square feet.
Okay, so that's huge. So then, when you have such an aggressive expansion plan, what kind of design changes, if any, do you see? Because you must have done the planning some time back, and now, in the light of what's happening, is there anything that worries you from a design standpoint? Specifically categories like entertainment, food and beverage, cinemas, those kind of categories. Do you see any changes to the mix? Or, do you have the view that, listen, we're on a path and this is a temporary blip and, we're going to stay on our path? So it'll be interesting to get your views on this.
Sure. So I'll break up the answer in a couple of points, Raghu. The first aspect that you spoke on design. On the design aspect for each of our centers, there's been a lot of planning on the design and architecture through the teams. I mean, they would have spent anywhere from 9 to 10 months putting the design and architecture together. And it's interesting the way one of the points that Pankaj mentioned in terms of mixed use development, you're aware that all of earlier Phoenix properties are also mixed use development. For example, a Chennai property will be a 3 million combination of a residential, retail. We opened a luxury mall there 2 years back. You have a boutique hotel. So, a mixed use development concept is something that we have been working all along. And I'll give you an example of the newer developments that we are building of the Bangalore Mall. The Bangalore Mall, we are calling it the Mall of Asia, and it's going to be over close to 2 million square feet of space. And it's very interesting what we are doing with the mall there. We have, in terms of the tenant mix, the point that you had on the tenant mix, close to 35% of the area is dedicated to multiplex, to entertainment options. We have an ice rink that we are developing ourselves, and we have 2-3 other entertainment options. We have close to 75 F&B outlets in that center. And on the design architecture side, just like, I mentioned in case of Lucknow, I think we are going all out. The interiors are going to be very opulent, very luxurious. That is something because, we believe that the customer wants to really enjoy something unique when he comes to the mall. And truly, we are the facilitator for the retailer, and we build these centers for our customers. So if we keep the requirement of the retailer and customer in mind, we want to go all out when we are building our malls. Coming to your second question, are we making any changes? I think, like I mentioned to you earlier, when we are building these assets, these are really for the long term. And there are certain trends that we have been seeing. Our centers have been operational for close to 10 years, most of our centers. And there are certain trends that we have been seeing over the last 5-6 years, which, Pushpa, Rajneesh, and Pankaj would also agree. where the customers are seeking more entertainment options, they are seeking more dining options, they are enjoying watching movies in a more luxurious multiplex environment. And because the content has been also increasing over a period of time, this thing about building larger number of multiplexes has also been working for the customer. So I think over a period of time, the tenant mix has been changing, keeping in mind the need of the customer. And also, we are sort of a facilitator for the retailer. So if the multiplex has a requirement for larger cinemas, if there are more and more F&B brands that are also wanting to come in to cater to the retailer, or the entertainment options, like Landmark Entertainment is doing 2 entertainment options in our Bangalore mall, and there are other 2-3 things that we are doing. So I think it will be too early to say that are we doing any changes. That currently we are not doing any changes. In fact, as we speak, last week construction has started at all our sites, and we are not doing any changes. Will we do any changes in the future? Our malls are all on a lease model. So, if there are any changes that happen, say 1 year down the line, I would say it would not even happen 1 month, 2 months down the line, because a 60-day, lockdown period, I don't think any brand, like a reputed multiplex brand like a PVR or a Inox, or any reputed entertainment brand, or, who have been there in the business for last 10 years, I don't think anyone will take immediate decisions for projects where they have to fit out 2 years hence. We've been very fortunate because Lucknow Mall was, it's 100% leased, and 85% of the brands were opening on 13th when we were opening the mall. And the rest of the malls are going to get into fit out only after 2 years. So we have been very fortunate that we don't have any, in this 2-year window, we don't have any new opening. But if you are asking my opinion from a general viewpoint for the industry, yes, if there is any mall that was getting into fit out now, they may want to tweak a little bit basis the demand from the retailer fraternity, because nobody will want to keep the spaces vacant. I think that is critical. None of the shopping centers can keep a space vacant for a year. So, as an example, if they had a unit which was catering to X utility, and they don't have any demand from that category, they may decide to change it for the time being, because they will not be able to keep the unit vacant for a year. So I think the answer will be different for different people. In our case, fortunately, we don't see the need to take any decisions right now to make any change. And currently, we are not making any changes.
Okay. That's actually quite encouraging to hear. I'm going on a sort of a separate note, but in a related sense. One of the most debated areas as we go forward with existing properties and with new developments is the whole area of omni-channel, integration of brick and mortar with e-commerce, with online retail. What impact will social media, whether it's Instagram or TikTok or Twitter or any of these, have on our centers? So Pushpa, can you shed some light on this? Because I know this is a subject that, that you've been quite vocal about.
Sure. Before that, if I can just value add a little bit more on the other subject on design. So sure. I believe, we've been really looking at different malls. And as you know, the mall in Gurgaon, we were about to announce the launch of the same. Sometime this year, we would have done so. But of course, now when I look at designs, I'm looking at flexibility being the key. Going forward, in fact, the past 2-3 years, if you see, format sizes have been changing. Earlier, we wanted flagships which were 50,000 square feet large. We wanted department store which was 70,000 square feet large. Now we don't. We actually want to look at format sizing. In fact, I can tell you, I negotiate a lot more on the size and the optimum size of a particular brand rather than the brand itself, because it's very important that retailers also understand that with e-commerce also there and with omni-channel becoming a reality, it's important that we get the right optimum size. The other issue is that we are also talking a lot in terms of, we've been talking about global, but we've never really set up projects which are global. We in DLF have set up, we just redid the mall, DLF Avenue. DLF Avenue has been done with a single intent of attempting to be a global center. What do we mean by that? It's very contemporary, very, very global in its outlook. However, it's highly local also in its need requirement or connect with the community. So we are trying to, which is why we had 30% of F&B in a space which is just 500,000 square feet of space in South Delhi, which is the most premium real estate that one can get. Because the more you create a center which is community oriented and almost a third place, apart from your work and home, then I think the idea of longer gestation in city center projects especially becomes a reality. And this is very connected to the omni-channel question, and I'll tell you why. Suppose there is a brand which has got, let's say, an 800 square feet space. Earlier, they were looking at 1600. Trust me, in city center locations, we're actually telling them, hey, make it crisp, make it better, because we need throughput. Our main currency is sales per square foot. So we need to get that sales per square foot going in order to make malls to be much more viable. How we can do that? The only way is by being flexible. If an F&B space has to be morphed into a semi-retail space with F&B, we should be able to do so. If there is a space which is going to, if there's a mixed-use development, we shouldn't set our mind. Currently, we are actually planning some things. We are not setting our minds up to say that it's going to be only an office as a mixed use. It could be a service apartment if the need arises. So what we are saying is flexibility is the key. Format size is the second key. And the reason for doing this is because then we can really cater to that community requirement in a far more fruitful fashion. Our belief in DLF is that, let's say in a tier 2 city, like the way Phoenix has done a beautiful mall. I was there, Rashmi, just 1 week before COVID. I think you guys have done a splendid job, and
Thank you. You're very kind.
Out of the city. But in Lucknow, that would do very, very well. Large malls, we will have to be very, very clear on why we are setting up that large destination mall. Does it have enough equity to take on people from, a 25-kilometer radius? In a small city like Lucknow, one is pretty much sure. But in cities, in urban populations, there's already saturation. So I would really look at malls being, the size is not important. What's important is what is it that we are bringing in as a value add? What's the differentiator? How are we making it different? We, in Avenue, we decided to go the global route. In some other place, we may decide to go into a completely different route. And I agree with Pankaj in saying it's not cookie cutter anymore. You can't have a cookie cutter model for malls. Consumers have become far more evolved. You need to create a product which is appealing to that particular micro market, which will stand in good stead for the next 20, 30 years. So that becomes a key point to consider. Now, how is the omni-channel related to this? It's because, again, trading density being the main currency that we look at, omni-channel probably will be also an important aspect to this. It's about where is the revenue coming in from? There could be multi-channels of revenue coming into that particular project. At the same time, consumers are saying, is it convenient enough for me to go and pick it up from there? Is it convenient that I go and interact with the mall today to pick up a shirt? But I'm also going to be looking at certain other things that I want. So omni-channel retailing is catering to that consumer need and that retailer need today, that we are part of a channel which is going to only increase. Today you talk to any retailer, Raghu, they are talking about ship from shop, they're talking about distance selling, they're talking about hyper local. Why are they doing that? Because they also know that just an e-commerce portal is not the answer. The answer is, how do I reach that consumer with convenience, with ease, and with interest? What are the different channels? So I think as a mall, we need to provide that interesting channel. We provide that additional convenience, as being an omni-channel space also. I know Capital Land has been doing a lot of work. I've been talking to some of them. It's not as if anyone's cracked the model yet. Everyone is launching something, testing it out, and trying if this works. Then they go back to their traditional ways of revenue share, mujhe revenue share chahiye, and that's that. But I think what will happen is that COVID, this crisis, will propel us into thinking on how we will be able to create multi-channels within our property. I have a famous saying, and I always tell my team, we are here to juice the property out. Every trading, every square inch matters. Unless you do that, you're not going to be growing. In DLF, I can tell you the past 3 years, without adding a new property, we managed to grow revenue, by around 45% in the past 3 years. The way we did it is because we looked at different kinds of revenue streams. Of course, that time the idea was much more on other income. How do we increase the other income? How do we create large events? Now that is not going to be a reality for a while. So we need to tweak that and orient ourselves towards omni-channel also, and keep our mind open. I'm not suggesting that we, sort of lose connect with our brick and mortar space. Brick and mortar space is the fundamental. Maybe we get 80% of our revenue through the clear brick and mortar space, but maybe there is an opportunity here to get that additional 20% omni-channel route. And that is something that we need to look at.
Okay, so I think we're rapidly running out of time. So I'm going to jump quickly so that we can cover a few more very interesting areas. And just staying with what Rashmi and then later Pushpa added in terms of design, omni-channel, and so on. So Rajnish, if I can come to you, can you talk us through how you look at customer experience? Because that's the other big component, right? One is you do great things to design, tweak design, refresh it, contemporize it. Then you bring in omni-channel, local, like Pushpa says, various things. But finally, the key to success or failure, I believe, will be driven by the experience that customers have in a center. So, how do we proactively anticipate and provide the kind of services that customers are looking for?
As I said earlier, that there is a huge room in the industry to create differentiated products, which would mean there would be neighborhood malls, there would be specialized malls, there would be integrated mixed-use developments, and each one will cater to a very different need of consumer, and it will fit into consumers' life very differently. So when it comes to experience, Raghu, it's not that same customer in each environment expects the same experience. Me as a customer in different environment is looking at different experiences. If it is a neighborhood center, my best experience would be that if I can get in and get out very fast. And I have to then design my mall for that experience. In a neighborhood or a medium-sized mall in my neighborhood, I would like to get into multiplex and get out of multiplex very fast, because my prime objective to visit is to see a movie. And if my design does not provide that experience, it is not something that I can make up by soft service. So the designing of the project by definition of the product that you're creating is going to create experiences. And the same consumer will look at different experiences and different setups. When I, as a consumer, go to a regional center, I am expecting a different level of service. When I am going into a neighborhood center, I will be expecting a different kind of service. My expectations are different and they need to be met differently. Also, I think when it comes to look at now COVID, one of the fundamental change which I see coming in consumer behavior and which will define and which needs to be addressed as a customer experience. I think as a community, our sense of personal space and social space will evolve. In our country, we had a very, we were not so sensitive about a personal space and a social space. We all talk about experiences that we have at airport where, people are just actually one above other and there is no respect for social space or personal space. With COVID, I think that is going to really change our behavior and our understanding about space required between the two human beings. And if that happens, I see a little bit of change in the space requirement or space demand by the retailers. They would need to do more space. They need to give more consumer space, and the merchandise space ratio to the consumer space or the common space will change, and that could be one of the more permanent change in the designs of the store, and malls may have to also incorporate that. Beyond that, I think in a premium price point, more personalization will continue to drive experience, and on a lower side, I think entertainment and convenience will continue to drive experience for consumers.
Okay, Pankaj, if I can come to you again, it's a natural flow. What role will technology play in all this in shopping centers 2021 and beyond? Because clearly we're looking at design, we're looking at customer experience, we're looking at omni-channel. All of this has to be backed by technology. So if you can share your views, please.
Okay, so technology, there'll be two sides to it. One will be the front end side of it, where the customers are interacting and touching base or connecting with you, or the world touch interfaces with you. The other side of the technology pieces, which is your back end, where the world does not know how the technology is being used. I think at the back end, there'll be a lot more faster, and all of us are doing it. Whether it is, I know you all are experimenting to do it, is how to use technology to optimize a more efficient way of operations, particularly on the energy side. Because ultimately, let's be honest about it, a business has two sides to it. A business has, one is how to make revenue, and the other side is how to optimize cost and to do it in the best, most possible way. I'll give you a small example. At Virtuous Retail, we invested in an app for our food court where you can actually sit anywhere, and it has got a virtual wallet like what you see in digital wallets today, where you can actually place order, and it's an award-winning app by the Shopping Centers Association. If you can place an order with any of the food outlets at our food court, and you can pay through your digital wallet, you can order in and you just get intimated and you can just go pick up. You can also pay your parking fees when you're exiting the shopping center with that app. So on that side, I think because with COVID, particularly right now, and we think going forward, once the customer gets used to it, it's about, everybody says that, it takes a certain amount of time for people to make it a habit. Earlier, we all not used to digital. Now all of us are very used to using digital currency. Earlier, we were not used to using credit cards, and then came digital. I think there will be a customer touch point. There will be enhancement in technology where you will make the ingress out or egress of the customer, the experience of the customer, where it will be guided through a virtual platform, whether it's through an app or through his mobile phone. Secondly, the journey of the customer will not start, or which used to usually start when he enters a shopping center. The journey of the customer will start wherever. It could start in the shopping center and end up at his house where he makes a purchase, or it could start in the Instagram page of the shopping center or the brand, and it could end up in the shopping center as well. I'll give you an example, and we're talking about online e-commerce, and Pushpa also talked about it. About 3 years back, I was attending a conference for my previous organization at JLL, and we invited the head of China for Gap. And he came and told us a very interesting anecdote. He said, wherever we closed stores, because Gap was restructuring in China at that point of time, he said, wherever we closed stores, our online retail sales and online commerce sales fell down with 30%. So really, you don't know where the customer is going to start his journey and going to end the journey. It's all fungible. It's all very fungible. So as long as a shopping center, you are able to, on the frontline side, able to engage with your customer very, very effectively and make his journey inside your shopping center very effective, he's going to reward you for it. So we invested in the food court app, and maybe there'll be many other things we'll want to do to experience. On the other side is, how do you make the technology to utilize to make your business operations more effective? Because let's be honest about it, some part of the businesses, human intervention will get limited, and technology will overtake. And we can use it. We can see it already happening in energy consumption, for example.
Okay, thanks. So far, we've been getting lots of messages and requests from people to talk about some fairly contentious issues. And this particular webinar, we very deliberately stayed away from sanitation, health, security, safe shopping, rental negotiations with retailers, because that's not the focus of this. The focus of this discussion has been retail 2021 and beyond, shopping centers. Now, notwithstanding that, do we still see, as we move forward, some rental models change? Do we see partnering with different formats like food and beverage? Is there something else which will tweak the traditional model of revenue streams as centers see them? Sort of touch upon this.
Raghu, you have left multiple questions bundled in a very sweet voice, and all tough ones. Principally, I don't see much change in the rental model in short term. I think they will. The models are well evolved and they are working. I don't see a pure revenue share model taking any prominence, or pure rental model taking any prominence. I think we have a very workable model in place, and it will continue that way. In long run, I think we will need to accommodate what Pushpa said earlier, and Pankaj also touched about it, is the omni-channel and the hyper-local model if retailers adopt. And we are seeing it happening in F&B any which way, where we are seeing increased sales through the platforms from the same kitchen. I think these businesses are taking, they are becoming sizable. And for operators, there is a need to accommodate them in the rental model of a mall, if they so choose to use that model from the store that they have in the mall. And that can go through a bit of change. Now, what nature it will take, I'm not very sure about it. I think as we understand the business, as we understand how we track that business, it will give us knowledge, and we will be able to track that and cater to that business requirement. That is one change I see, which possibly in 2 to 3 years time we will start discussing more commonly. Coming to investment and looking at a differentiated rental model for F&B, Raghu, one of the things that is so difficult about F&B is that it is not a distribution model, it's a manufacturing model. You really cook food in the kitchen where you have the store. Unlike any other apparel or shoe brand where you manufacture at one place, quality control it, and distribute it, it doesn't happen in F&B. And second, the customer engagement or customer interaction is very, very high. And these two things make it so tough and so very peculiar to this business that if you see the entire industry, there are very few people who have broken the geographical barriers and gone into multiple cities or multiple regions. It is a business which is requiring very, very tight control, and most of the operators have confined themselves to a particular region so that they can deliver this very tight control on operations and product that is required for the business to succeed. And in this model, if consumer requires certain product and you want to bring that operator in, I think malls will be happy to participate. I see opportunities or such transactions increasing if the mall takes into account capital risk, but the retailer or the restaurant takes care of the operating risk, because he is the guy who's operating the business. He is the guy promising the delivery of quality of food and the service. So if respective parties are able to take risk assessment and conform to that risk, I see this model can take off in near future.
Okay, that's a good perspective. We're completely out of time, so I'm just going to wrap up with one final question, which I'd like each of the panelists to answer. Let's do some crystal ball gazing. What will shopping centers look like and perform 12 months from today and 24 months from today? Anyone in any particular order, I mean, any one of you. Please go ahead.
Rashmi, you taking it up?
I think we'll see the shopping centers buzzing with happy customers 12 months from today and 24 months from today. Because the whole approach with the retail brand partners is going to be to bring the business back. and bring the customer back. And I think, in partnership with our brands, we are going to fully focus and work on that in the coming months. And that's what we look forward to, seeing lots of happy customers back in the mall.
Great.
So I think 12 months from now, we think that, yes, there will be happy customers back on track. In fact, we are looking forward to that even by October. But within 12 months, I would say we would have reached consumption patterns which were equal to pre-COVID times for sure. 24 months from now, I actually anticipate a V curve triggering in this country, because India was actually at that cusp where it was just about getting into the real space of consumption. I mean, that it was very clear, the writing was on the wall. Unfortunately, we've had to go through this episode, this chapter, but post this, within 24 months for sure, and fingers crossed, we would have also started constructing the big mall in Gurgaon by then. So yes, crystal ball gazing.
Great. Okay. Pankaj?
I might just make it a little more controversial, but that's always interesting. When I said it's not necessarily the organization only which I represent or the others, but I just feel, I think the retail industry, the role of a shopping center will become much more formidable. I think over the last couple of years as an industry, over the particularly last decade, we've been talking about in saying high street versus shopping centers versus online. I think the influencing journey for a retail brand, shopping centers will play a far bigger role going forward, because let's be honest about it, in India, we do not have too many entertainment options except take our families or spend time in a shopping center. Secondly, the good thing with, sometimes there are some good things about COVID is, we'll also, let's take a takeaway from there as well. The confidence level for a customer to come back in a structured environment will be far more than a high street. So I think customers will come back in a far more proportion to a shopping center, and comfort level will always be more, because I think the sanitization centers, and we don't want to get into that, but will be higher. So I think shopping centers will play a far more role in the influencing journey for a customer, for a brand to shop, whether the brand sales originate in the online or whether it's offline. And also, I think from an industry perspective, I think it will become a lot more level playing field for retailers. I think as a shopping center, we've not yet matured to offer a level playing field for all kinds of retailers. There have been terms which are benefited to, say, certain SKU of retailer. I think it will become more normalized now. It may not be the same, but I think it will be normalized, because I think with a dip, always when you come out to be smarter, and you become out as more resilient as a business as well. So I think shopping centers will also realize that they'll have to build more resilient business models than stories which are future sold. I think so here right now we'll be always look at more short business models, and I think all fraternity of retailers will also demand that from you.
Great. Rajneesh, last word from you.
I am looking at this from two perspectives. From a consumer's perspective, Raghu, I think next 6 to 8 months is survive and revive. Customers will start coming in, and to reach a business level, I think that is the time frame which I think Diwali and then post Diwali, we should start seeing very close to the last year numbers. 24 months down the line, which is literally the next financial year end, I think we would be able to see consumption levels higher than what we finished financial year 2019 as. So we will be a few inches higher, and we will be able to bring back the growth in consumption, and consumers will embrace that. On the supply side, on the shopping center supply side, in next 2 years, I see a slowdown, and most of the malls which were ready to open now may have to delay a little, and they will be derailed because of these 2.5 months of lockdown. And I think a lot of people who were about to start construction, and I'm not talking about the bigger groups, they have their financial closures and they have confidence in this industry. But a lot of supply is beyond this group of large developers, and I see a little delay in that, and that will be delayed at least by 2 to 3 years time, is what I see happening in shopping center industry.
Okay, that's good. But I want to thank all four of you, because I think it's been a very, very useful discussion. I hope, Amitabh told me just before we started that before we began the webinar, more than 900 people have registered and plus several hundred on YouTube. So over 1,000 people viewing. And I hope this has been useful for all of them. Before we wind up, if I can ask Pramod from IT to play the video, I just want to leave behind a very positive message which we got. This is from Simon Malls in the US. So if Pramod, if we can play the video, please. Pramod, there's no volume. Pramod, no volume in the video.
Raghu, isn't it not
No, there's
fantastic?
No, why Pramod can't play the volume?
Hello.
I think it's fantastic that customers are just coming in, buying without making any noise.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'm sorry we overshot a bit, but I want to thank all the panelists. I think it's been a great discussion, very insightful, and I hope all the viewers got some good value and good insights and good perspective on.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Raghu, you should definitely
Sir,
sign
hello?
off with the fact that
Sir,
Indians
मैं
are
चला
the
रहा हूँ,
most
वो thanks
resilient.
बोल रहे हैं, वहीं पे बंद करने के लिए कह रहे हैं. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well said, Pushpa. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.